The insane are treating the insane. I think you'll want to stick around for this one. At the end of the 1990s, I was doing some research for a musical I wrote called Meat Street. I got the title from the fact that Wilhelm Wundt, the father of psychology, at the end of the 19th century, decided that man had no soul. He was just a stimulus response animal. You supply the correct stimulus, you get the desired behavior. In other words, no one was really responsible for their own actions. So if man had no soul, he was just a piece of meat, and Earth was Meat Street. My research took me into some very scary territory. I read dozens of books about the mental health industry and found out some really terrifying facts. 100 years ago, there were only 3 or 4 mental disorders. Now there are almost 400. This is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's called the DSM. This is volume 4. They're up to 5 now. My first major shock, no pun intended, was finding out how so many diseases were discovered.
Psychiatry in all of this time doesn't have one case report of one disease validated, not one. What they do is they meet at the American Psychiatric Association. They meet in the DSM committee, Diagnostic Statistical Manual Committee, and they vote on making new behavioral and emotional disorders.
Did he say vote? Yeah. There are no blood tests, x-rays, or any other lab tests for any of the mental disorders.
And they vote, and then they start immediately calling them diseases. And they tell people, they tell the public these are diseases. Total fraud.
All of the mental illnesses in the DSM were declared, not discovered. And once listed in the DSM, your insurance covers it. How convenient. No wonder there's been an increase of epidemic proportions in the numbers of mentally ill. According to the DSM, everything from trouble with spelling to jet lag to being late for work is a mental illness. So instead of being able to fire that bum for never showing up to work, he gets therapy and you get sensitivity training to learn how to deal with his illness. According to the manual, you're mentally ill if you are addicted to coffee, caffeine-related disorders, have trouble speaking in public, expressive language disorder, can't handle math problems, mathematics disorder, can't write a good essay, disorder of written expression. And just in case you disagree with your doctor and don't actually think you're crazy, then you're suffering from non-compliance with treatment disorder. Quite a catch-22. But wait! I've got a chemical imbalance in my brain.
The actual truth about chemical balance is that it's an actual lie. Nobody has yet measured, demonstrated, or created a test to show that somebody has a chemical imbalance in their brain. Period.
You know when you feel the weight of sadness. You may feel exhausted, hopeless, and anxious. Whatever you do, you feel lonely and don't enjoy the things you once loved. Things just don't feel like they used to. These are some symptoms of depression, a serious medical condition affecting over 20 million Americans. While the cause is unknown, depression may be related to an imbalance of natural chemicals between nerve cells in the brain. Prescription Zoloft works to correct this imbalance.
Did you catch that? He said no one knows what causes depression, but it may be a chemical imbalance. Zoloft works to correct this. Maybe it's an imbalance. Insane.
The medications that are being given to people are, without exception, introducing chemicals that are altering the brain in ways which can be very damaging. And I'll go a step further and say that in the absence of a proven chemical imbalance for which the medications are, quote, rebalancing or fixing, the medications are in fact toxic.
Psychiatry has turned away from their ideas that you can treat someone through the talking therapies. These days, the doctor doesn't even have to see the patient. He just needs a list of behaviors, and then he prescribes the drugs. And when the drugs don't work, electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, shock therapy has made a comeback. 480 volts of electricity through the brain is supposed to cure patients who don't respond to the drugs. The electricity causes a grand mal seizure. These days they give the person muscle relaxants so they don't break their teeth or spines, but the seizure is still there. Psychiatry is also a convenient way to get rid of your political enemies. And I don't just mean in China and Russia.
As a psychiatrist, I remember very well the condemnation by the American Psychiatric Association of Soviet psychiatrists and the Soviet Union for their use of psychiatric techniques and psychiatric medications to control political dissidents. Sadly, shockingly, we in the United States have become those same oppressors. We now have a policy, as exemplified by the FBI brochure from the Phoenix Office on Counterterrorism, which says people who are defenders of the U.S. Constitution against federal government and the UN and make numerous references to the U.S. Constitution should be monitored as potentially murderous, and fanatical terrorists, by extension, should be considered mentally unstable. Under the new Freedom Commission, mentally unstable people must be medicated on a compulsory basis with lethal and untested but very profitable psychiatric medications.
If we were to have a mandatory mental health screening, as they like to call it, not only of all of the young people in school, but all adults and everybody, it would become a terribly effective tool in the hands of totalitarians. Because surely you could find something in everybody's questionnaire if they answer questions honestly. Have you ever had feelings of anxiety? Are you ever unhappy with what the government does? You put that in the context of what everything else that's happening in society, the growth of government, the growth of big government, the diminishing of personal freedoms, the desire to regiment the population and eliminate opposition to the political leaders. When we put it into that picture, now it takes on a very special meaning. When you look at the area of psychiatry, it becomes particularly worrisome because many people are not sensitized to the political implications of using that field. If we're not willing to challenge, and if we're already afraid that somebody's going to put this label around us, then we've already lost. There's no turning it around. The time has come for us to stand on our convictions, to know what is right, to take the risks, and stand for freedom.
Apparently, there wasn't enough money in shocking adults, so now they've turned their attention to kids, even kids aged 5 and younger, and all because the drugs aren't working on a made-up disease.
Drug Administration has approved a new medical device to treat ADHD in children.
It delivers electric pulses to your kid's brain while your kid sleeps. One of the biggest disasters of all was when the drug companies decided and the government aided and abetted them in turning our children into a market for psychiatric drugs. And we've got probably at least 20% of our boys diagnosed ADHD and on drugs. And the drugs don't work. We know with absolute clarity that the drugs don't help the kids, but they do stunt their growth, give them cardiovascular problems, make them addiction prone. My friend Michael Cornwall, a psychologist in California, sent me a notice that the FDA had approved something new for ADHD in children, that children would now, with a prescription from their doctor, be able to get a little machine that their parents or guardian could put electrodes on their foreheads to stimulate their brains with an electrical current strong enough to affect the functioning of the entire front of the brain, to leave it there all night long for day after day after day.
How many patients have you been able to cure so far?
I would say one.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
The idea of you asked me about the issue about how many people I've cured. I don't know that any of us are ever completely cured of anything.
I have not been able to cure many patients.
I have cured none of my patients.
And now for some dumb shit.
Everyone takes a crap. Everyone goes to the bathroom, so everyone can relate to that. And the terms that I use to name these products are everyday terms that, people are used to hearing and stuff. So you just try to, combine the two to come up with something halfway decent that's funny, For example, the first thing that we make now, instead of a cuckoo clock, see, this is a poo-poo clock. And what we did see is we took them turds and we crammed them in between the number there, so that's 130, 230, 330. Now over here we make fecal people. And depending upon the shape of that middle turd right there, we can do them with big boobs or guts or butts or long legs or short legs, see, because there's no two turds that are ever alike. You ever seen a turd, the two turds alike? No. The turds are all local. We just go out and track the moose, and wherever the moose are, they're going to take a crap. And I have found that when a moose takes a dump, you walk about 50 yards in any direction and they take another dump. And when a moose takes a dump, they'll crap out between 200 and 400 turds every time they take a crap. So it's like I get $5 a turd for these things, so I get jumping right up and down. I get excited when I see a turd. Get on there, and that's all my turds are on that page right there with the prices, and click on them and then get to me and let me know what you need for turds.
It's a beautiful thing.
Metro High teacher Ellen Driscoll and her colleague were enjoying a lunchtime walk around campus when it happened.
We were back where they were playing volleyball, and right when I realized that she was going to pass out, I looked at a student and I said, "Help, help."
Not far away, Salim Muhammad was in the gym.
I was working out and these two girls came in and called my coach, and I ran out with him.
Salim followed the girls to the woman on the ground, unconscious.
They said her heart stopped, so I started doing chest compressions.
While Driscoll put the 911 operator on speakerphone, Muhammad performed CPR for nearly 5 minutes until first responders arrived.
Nobody asked him. He just jumped in willing to help. And it was like an angel coming down, because I was very afraid. And to have somebody come in willing to help was magical, just amazing.
She came gasping for air and she was awake.
The junior, who's studying auto collision at Metro High, says he learned CPR in health class.
It's just a normal thing. I feel like everybody should know how to do it, and it was easy. I would do it again.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for watching. You know, it looks like the gatekeepers are at it again. I went from about 2,000 views per day a little while back to about 1,000 views every week or two. Something very, very screwy is going on. Somebody doesn't want this information getting out there, possibly. So the best way you can help to get this widely available is to share it with as many people as possible. And of course, always like it and subscribe if you haven't. And also, you could buy my merch and, check me out on Spotify, follow me there. It all helps. I'll keep this thing going as long as I can. Anyway, love you guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.